All right, here we go. Here we go. All right, Matt. Well, welcome,
Welcome.
welcome, welcome.
Yes,
How you doing, brother?
I'm great. Great. Happy to be here. It's been a great day.
Okay, awesome, man. So things are a little bit different in the studio.
Yeah, it's come together.
It is coming together, man. So I'm kind of happy that we're doing this. Like I told you earlier, I saw this meme and it said one of the best things that you can do is shorten the time between idea and execution. And I remember you telling me less than a week ago, or maybe about a week ago, that you wanted to do this video. You had an idea and you wanted to get it done. And here we are.
Yeah, feels good. I think what kicked off that idea was just World Mental Health Day, October 10th, I believe. So I kind of jump started that. A lot of stuff going on. We're doing that fundraiser for those three firefighters to get a memorial made for each of them for their fire station.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So we're raising, trying to hit $1,500 to get some nice bronze bills made for like a garden or landscape area. Three firefighters within the last year, took their life locally. I mean, in three, you don't, that's a big number for, especially in one localized area. So
So they're all Lee County.
yeah, two from the same department.
Wow. That's definitely a hard hit, man, no matter what. Two from the same department or just one, right?
Yeah, two of them were inactive, one retired, one was a disabled firefighter, and then one active. But still, yeah, it's a big number.
So then that's the reason why you're doing so what is it that you're doing? What is it? Tell me.
So Halloween, 3 p.m. at Hair Artistry in Cape Coral. We're gonna be shaving my head and beard.
Okay.
Doing it to raise the funds. So we're at $700 right now within 1 week. So we're halfway there.
All right. And the goal is 15.
Yeah, 15.
All right. So let's get it out there, man. Let's get this up to 1500 for
I
sure.
uh
So you're gonna shave your beard and your head?
yeah.
All right.
It's gonna be terrible.
No, it's for a good cause. So the reason is to raise awareness.
Yeah, having these memorials, it's to be a symbol for mental health all the time in their departments and, never be forgotten. No one should go out like that, especially a first responder, a veteran, and, be forgotten.
For sure, man. I totally agree on that 100%. So and then that brings us for the reason that we are here today, right? We wanted to talk a little bit about, I guess, the aftermath or some of the things that lead to some of us doing those things. We all, I think about this. I'm a big Mac Miller fan, and he has this line in one of his songs. He's like, "Yo, we all have dead homies, and it sucks, but it's true, right?" And
Right.
some of them, there's nothing that we could have done about or anything. It was just life. But some of them, I feel that could have been prevented but with better help, better tools, better people around.
Yeah. One thing you say that one reason, like one of these guys, the disabled firefighter, Michael Pfister, we had very similar stories and stuff. So, and he left, he was kind of let go and had to fend for himself. That kind of hit close to home. And that's what kind of kickstarted all this. We just did the Healing Heroes campaigns twice, once in July, once in December, right? With Planet 13.
That's a big deal, man.
Well, after each of those initiatives, one of those people went through with it. So John was in December. We did the Healing Heroes in November last year. And then this year we did it, when we ended, July 7th, something like that.
July 6th was the last day.
Yeah. And like Mike took his life the same week. So for us, our mission, what we do, and for that to happen after each one of them so close to home, it was a huge downfall, not and kind of a feeling of failure to have people so close, but yet, so far. So
For sure, man. I mean, I think a lot of us know what it feels like to be in a room full of people and yet feel so alone, right? Be in a crowded place and feel like nobody's there. Feel that emptiness that sometimes feels real, right? It's deceiving and it's damn good at it. I mean, that's for sure. Our minds are powerful, bro, and we create these things.
well, you talking about that, it really brings some stuff to mind about, our friendship and peer to peer support. There's been so many times where I've called you from work, from home, just talking to you about these scenarios that I'm trying to prepare for or get through that, you know, number one is it's just so funny when we would talk about it, there was no evidence of it being real. And then, the biggest thing that always weighs with me, even after a fact, because after stuff, you have to talk with yourself about, stuff. You telling me, hey, Matt, I don't want to play into those fictitious realities. It kind of made me snap and look at you, and you're like, yeah, man,
I
those
remember
aren't
the
real.
first time I told you,
Yeah.
I think it was still while I was working with you. And back then, Vitacan, we were doing a delivery, and whatever it was, at the end of the day, the shift was over, and we were just kind of hanging out afterwards. Life had you stressed out at that moment for whatever it was. Could have been anything. It doesn't matter. The reason is irrelevant. Fact was that you were stressed, and I was like, and we were just kind of getting to know each other a little bit. I was like, "Hey, easy, bro. I don't feel like I'm gonna be joining you in this part of your thought process. You're creating realities that are just not real, and I don't want to be part of it." It was so funny. You're like, "Wait a minute," and I don't know if it was like that for you or not, but for me, it felt like you had this moment of realization. You're like, "Oh
It
shit."
snapped. I was just like, wow, that is what I, always do and stuff. And but
It was
there's been
funny.
times where like I've been, like super stressed about stuff or going through stuff. And, you really told me like, Matt, like you're really good at creating these realities. Like you're really good at it. And just hearing that stuff it's just super helpful. If you're overwhelmed, especially with like PTSD and anxiety, if you're overwhelmed or going through it, your nervous system is just wired different. It's wired for fight or flight. So you just respond to stuff differently. So you have to take a moment and learn to step away, just let stuff work out. Or um, really, what are you thinking about? Like, call yourself out on stuff. Are these thoughts real?
Well, man, I've heard that it's impossible to think yourself out of a prison made of thoughts. So when we think it sounds funny, we think that we can think ourselves out of these situations that are created by our own thoughts. So it's like going around in circles and with the
Right.
whole carrot dangling right in front of you, thinking if I do this and if I do this, and then things will get better. And when you get there, if I do that one more thing, and next thing you know, it's been years and you're running around in circles in your own stress, your own idea of feeling better, but it doesn't work. You know what I mean? It feels like we're making progress. We're busy doing things, but we're doing circle eights.
Busy work is in progress.
It's not, man. Busy work,
Let
busy work helps for a little bit, but it eventually has no effect. It becomes a waste of time and energy where you could be doing something different. Cool, man. So we're here today, and we were kind of going over some notes, and we decided that we were going to call this PTSD and peer to peer support. Trying to get a nice name on it. And we did a little research, and we're like, what does the current science say what PTSD is? You remember we looked it up? I'm not going to put you on the spot and have you here recite it, but I know you wrote it down here in my notes, and it's a little dark. So I'm not going to pretend that I don't need glasses. But the reality is that I think it went something like going through something traumatic, a person, either they go through it themselves or they witness it, a mental health condition that somebody witnesses or experiences that is very traumatic, either through combat, car accidents, and et cetera, et cetera. Right? There's a big list of things that
Right.
can. So I feel like it's almost endless to a certain point.
I mean, the biggest thing with trauma is everyone perceives stuff differently. So, different traumatic situations, people are going to perceive that situation differently.
Right.
That's also a big deal.
What is persistent that is that a condition that happens to
Right.
all of us. As to how we experience that, that's unique to the person. And to the trauma or whatever, right? And combination of that. So yeah, so we're calling it PTSD and peer-to-peer support. And we kind of jumped ahead a little bit about creating fictitious realities. And the reason why we kind of put that in our cluster of thoughts here was because I was telling you how it becomes almost second nature or force of habit, call it what you want, how we behave when trauma happens, we get stressed out, whatever it is. And I'm not talking about the original thing that brought on the PTSD. I'm talking about way later in life when you think you have all the stuff in the bag and you're doing well, right? When it comes in at night and creeps up, right? Those are the moments I'm talking about.
Sometimes, yeah,
And that's when it matters the most, to be honest.
right. And some people I've talked to that actually retired out, it hit them afterwards.
Well, you can kind of classify our work, active duty, you as a firefighter or any other first responder, right? People that have situations where trauma can happen and will happen, it happens all the time. So with people that, and I guess we can say that it doesn't just happen to first responders or veterans, right? It happens to anyone at any given moment. The reason why I bring that up, and I know we are a nonprofit that serves veterans and first responders, but have to account that, yes, most of us have experience, if not all of us, right? At some level have experienced some type of PTSD event, right? And we deal with it. Yes, we've not dealt with it good times. Other times we dealt with it great. But we can't put out of the equation that some of the people that we deal with now on the regular, every other, for lack of a better word, civilian, that they're not going through their own version of PTSD as you're dealing with them. You know what I mean? You can't pretend that only us go through this.
Yeah, people
Everybody. So you never
experience
know
trauma
who's
anywhere.
going through it. You know what I'm saying? I think that helps me calm down a little bit when an event that can piss me off easily or used to piss me off easily. I know one day, man, you said something like, "Oh, I feel like you got it together." Man, dude, let me tell you that. And I think my answer to you was, "Oh no," you said to me, "You're healed." And I was like, "No, I'm healing, right? I'm in the process. It's forever, right? It's a forever thing, man. Like
You don't want it to be, but sometimes,
it
oops,
doesn't have to be a task,
no, right.
right? It's kind of like working out. The people who love to work out, they kind of learn to enjoy the process, the soreness. They understand that it's part of it. Healing for me doesn't mean pretending that I was never in trouble or that I was never pissed or that I don't have PTSD and whatever else the VA and shit wants to label me with, right? There's a whole plethora of things that they labeled me with. And I was labeled for a reason. I was actually going through that, Dude, when I first went through my PTSD clinic in the VA clinic in Miami, I was an angry drunk person. You ending up in the PTSD clinic does a lot of things to you and for you. I think I told you the story really quick. They made me write a letter the first day that I got there to tell me how I felt. I wrote it. After the clinic was done, several weeks later, she made me write another letter to how I was feeling. But before, she made me read the original letter. Dude, like 3/4 of the way, I began to cry. I started to freaking cry, dude. I was like, I went in there thinking this is not going to help me, right? I've been angry at the VA for stuff for so long. I was angry at everybody. And the VA was just another group of people in the long list of why I was angry. And that big list, you know what was missing? It was missing my name. You know what I mean? Yes. I was good at making lists. The government pissed me off. Taxes and drivers. I mean, dude, my list was long and
I can relate.
you know what I mean? And so going through PTSD clinic or going through some kind of professional therapy sessions, I didn't think they were going to work, man. And as long as I believed that they didn't, they didn't. It wasn't until I changed my mind. I was like, you know what? I'm already here. And my therapist's name at the time was Miss Green. Miss Green was a great therapist. She connected well with her. I think that's important to have a connection with whoever it is, your peers or a professional, right? That connection has to be genuine for us to be able to open. I can't speak on everybody. For myself, opening up to people was a task that I didn't want to do.
Yeah, I know. I didn't, my first therapist, EAP, I didn't really, I shut them down. But finally, when my department forced me into therapy, I connected with my first therapist. She was a big reason that kind of made it out of there, I would say. So
This is why you were still active or after?
they put me in therapy like a year before I left. I stayed in it. So it was a big deal. Big deal.
Okay. So I'm over here going through some of our raw thoughts in this cluster that I like to do when I have conversations like this, right? And another thing that we were talking about that we lightly spoke about was those fictitious realities, right? But the fictitious realities happen for a reason. They don't just appear out of nowhere, right? What's creating them?
Your you know, with PTSD, your body or your mind, your nervous system jumps into fight or flight quicker, a lot faster than, an average person. And you start preparing for, the worst to try and make it through.
Right.
That's a big thing.
Right. That's another point that we talked about, right? Which I thought it was very important. You said that you plan for things that never happen, right?
No. So, like thinking back in the past 2 years, we kind of just from times we talked, just half the stuff that I even
But that's like that. Like I don't know what percentage. I think it's a high percentage. My mind wants to say 98% of all the negative things that we think happen are gonna happen never happen. I'm not saying that things don't happen, right? But not not all the things that we think are gonna happen because of something negative, and it becomes like a little domino effect. Something negative happens, right? We can't help sometimes, but we can help how we feel about that thing that happened. And we can help it not create a domino effect where now everything is a problem. I mean, have you ever been around people that are always going through something? There's always a problem. If it's not a job, if it's not a loved one, a car, I mean, the list goes on because they're good at that list. They're good list
right.
makers, man.
I think, it's just the biggest challenge is trying to live in peace and a sense of calm reality because your mind is so good at living through the trauma and all the stress that it kind of feels comfortable at those moments.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Which kind of leads me to our next point here. I think all of us are pretty good about knowing what's the cause. A lot of us have gone through some type of therapy. So we have some sort of tool bag with ideas, right? That's all they are. They're ideas that we can implement and have them work towards us. But the idea doesn't do anything in the bag if we don't make it work, if we don't put it to use, or if we're not calm enough to understand during times of stress that we have a tool bag at all, right?
Your tools.
I mean,
I mean, my biggest thing about PTSD and all this is having, mental health buddy. You know what I mean? If you think about just example, this is different subject, but AA, they have sponsors, right? So when they're going through it, they have someone to call and just be like, hey, I'm not okay, or hey, whatever. And it's the same thing. When you're going through it, like, you need to have someone that you can just go to and say anything and feel comfortable.
I like what you called it earlier. You called it a mental health buddy. And I like it because, like I was telling you when we were speaking a little bit earlier, in the military, a lot of us are kind of at least used to the idea of hearing what a battle buddy is. Not all the branches use the same terminology, but we all kind of have a similar idea of what that is. It's just usually the person that you're closest to, right? That connection that I was talking about earlier. And you kind of just look out for each other. And, not when you're back in the rear or like back in your regular everyday life, but when you're out deployed in, some faraway land or whatever, and you just kind of start looking out for each other in any way that you can. Obviously, that doesn't translate exactly over here, but I do like what you said, man. A mental health buddy. It feels kind of cool to know that. I never thought about it. I know AA people do it, like you said, but that hasn't been something that it's been in my bag of tools per se. Although I have you, I have Jeff, I have a couple other buddies,
Right.
but, and I know that I can call you, but having the idea in the tool bag to say, you know what, I feel like I'm starting to get stressed out or something like this. I better call Jeff or I better call Matt, right? Or if you have a close spouse, my wife, Marianne, I'm like, hey, love, I'm starting to feel stressed. Maybe there's some kind of thing that we help each other
I
do.
mean, a big thing, and this is just so easy, no one really needs to know anything special, but big thing is just hearing a different perspective.
True.
Just remembering, calling you and just be like, hey, about this. And you're like, oh, Are you sure? Why is that? Well, this. I mean, that's is that real? And it's just like it's just hearing that different perspective.
Yeah, man.
It's I we've talked about resiliency, right? And I don't mean to jump, but it's gonna lead me into the next part. But
Oh, that's good.
have different levels of resiliency, different things affect that. But you can be super resilient and still have moments of weakness, right? And when just example John McMahon, one of the three, he was someone that taught mental health, peer support, PTSD classes. He would respond and help people through it. He expert on the tools. And he taught people toolboxes and the tools to put in. But after that happened, I went to my therapist couple sessions because it was just someone so again, how I said I feel like you've healed and stuff. And it's just for someone to show that level of knowledge and strength. It's just like because a lot of times you've helped me, it gives me that perspective, right? So for someone to have the answers, teach their classes, and have all the tools in the toolboxes, it was just, I don't know, just like it made me question my own mental health, right? It's just like someone this strong or this, knowledgeable on it could fall. What about me? So, I went and talked about it and stuff. It just anyone can have a moment of weakness. Something can happen at any point in someone's life and to make it feel like I've lost everything. You know what I mean? Just perfect example is it's a little different, but Ian, Hurricane Ian, right? Like that was a very intense thing for you. Like your house got destroyed.
Yeah, man. Everything I owned.
Right. So, you pretty much lost everything. So that could have been a weakness. Just this is just an example. It's just, people go through divorces, drastic life changes. And that can cause moments of weakness where forget all your tools and toolboxes. But this is just the buddy system, like to have someone where you can just call and be like, I've lost everything. My life is over. I'm done. Or just, you got to give someone that one chance. And that's where I want to be very loud and advocate about having a mental, if more than one, great, but just that one person, you know.
For sure. I mean, I think that one person, and it just builds that, it gives me that vibe of that illustration where two people are helping each other lean when they're back to back, when they're sitting down. You've seen that?
Yeah.
Like, think of you sitting in the grass with somebody to your back. I've done that before. We were out in the field and we were tired and we're like, man, we can't lay down here. And we just kind of lean up against each other. Like, lean on my back, I'll lean on yours. And that mentality definitely carries over to what you're talking about. I'm really picturing what you're saying. Like I know I can call you. I know I can call a bunch of people if I was feeling a certain way. Having that one that you would call first, right? Because we came into an agreement that we're going to be each other's mental health buddies or whatever.
And, I have 4 people that, situation, and it's just because of previous experiences and stuff, after I left before I left, I went through a really rough period and, my last year. And there was one call, one shift, it hit me and I made the decision where I was just done. I blew up on my crew that night, just like I was bad, man. I just like my friends, real close friends, and I just screamed at them. But after that call, and I just performed terrible. So that's where it just like I was done.
You feel like that was like the beginning of towards the end of for you as to be an active firefighter?
Craziest part is I was going through paramedic school and I continued. Going through PTSD and trauma and just like trying to go through paramedic school, which was completely unorganized and a joke. It was a terrible decision. There's people perceive EMTs as, you look they look down upon you and if it came down to promotions, it would be held against you. I've seen it. So
I'm no stranger to that, man.
it was
That's
kind
That's
of like I had no choice, but it was the wrong time, but regardless. But so, I had that bad shift. I was going through it and I made that decision and I got back to the station and I stayed up the rest of the night to talk to anyone. And, I typed up a note on my phone. I didn't talk to anyone the rest of the shift. And when I made that decision, and this is another thing, when you make that decision and you're going through so much pain and suffering and you come to that, it brings you peace.
you're talking about, and I'll probably have to bleep this part out, but you're talking about the thought of suicide.
Yeah. When someone comes to that decision where they feel like their life's over or whatever, at least for me, I felt all my head stop hurting instantly. I literally felt calm. Like it was insane
I know
the relief of pressure, weight off my
it scared
shoulders.
me. It scared me when I
So
felt it.
it didn't scare me.
It-
I was happy. I would
You know why it scared me? Because it scared me on how good it felt.
right.
So it scared me because I knew it wasn't real, but I felt easy,
So
right? And then ever since then, I heard this thing, man, that says, again, I'll probably bleep it out, but suicide doesn't stop the pain; it just transfers it
uh,
to the people that we love.
So I'm on my way home. I didn't talk to anyone again. I just left real nice and calm out of the station. I get a text from someone and he wasn't even he's on my shift or anything. And again, I didn't tell anyone anything. I just left.
So you're talking about the night where you had this thought, right? Where you felt this peace after you had this
Made
thought,
this decision.
and you were, I mean, I guess if we're getting real here, you were on your way to go do something,
Right. I was going home to go for
to go through with what you initially thought,
right. 100.
and then you got a text. Okay.
I got a text from one of my friends, one of my close ones, and he asked, "Where are you going?" And I just told him home. No other context. And his next text was, "You doing it?" It was just blew my mind. It like how he could have known. Like I didn't say anything, give any hints, nothing. So I was just like, it kind of hit me and I was just like, oh yeah, I guess it would mess so and so up. And it was like it would mess me up, and just not hearing that, but reading that. And I was just like, it just hit me. I'm just like, no, I shook it off and I'm just like, yeah, that's not the answer. But, anyone hears from their one of their best friends, we all multiple best friends. So if you were to hear those words from someone, hey, if you do that, you're gonna make me collapse. It's so powerful.
Well, it was real.
Yeah.
He was sharing what he felt. That he was letting you know that you mean something to him.
So,
You know.
that's when like I don't think it would ever hit me again because that reality of hearing someone say that to me or, and then I promised them that it would definitely it's just something I couldn't do. Knowing that I could have hurt someone that bad, it hit me. And I especially someone I care about, I couldn't do it to them because, they do really well. And I don't want to make someone have a downfall because, I just I could imagine. It makes you think about people that, you don't wanna lose and that you would do anything for whatever they were going through. So, it was after that fast track about a year, I leave the apartment, I wouldn't say I'm in worse shape mentally, but I'm still in, pretty rough shape. So, having similar thoughts again and going through that stuff and really going through it because you have no support or anything. You're just doing it. And so one of my other friends, real close friends, I gave up my access to all my firearms. So it's just, you have to be proactive. You know what I mean? If you're going through stuff, you have to take precautions and measures.
True. I mean, you know what some of the dangers around your life are. It could be anything. It could be that. It could be anything, man. It doesn't have to be something that can cause harm, such as a weapon. It could be easily, we know alcohol does it, right? We know overeating, right? Using food as a way out. We know people turn to their feelings and let them overrun with anger, right? And then when you leave anger unchecked, it turns into rage, right? And all these emotions unchecked turn into something else. And then they get stuffed in the bottle, and we're going through something medical, and we fall right back to that. Like we were talking about old habits. Some of those old habits was we don't get help, right? To get help is to be looked down upon. You don't go talk to a doctor. You don't go to sick call, right? I don't know what you guys call it in the fire department, but or sick bays. There's so many different names, but you just don't do it, man. Especially, that's why a lot of us are messed up. We failed to take the right medical precautions while we could, because it was not something that it was okay.
Yeah, but also, I want to say, you got to be cautious about what you consume. And I mean that with medicine, with, what you're intaking, through social media, through the news, alcohol is a big one. You have to call yourself out. And through peer support, you got to be able to ask people, you're going through this. What are you willing to change from what you're doing to change your situation? Is it, people are drinking and they don't even bring that up. You're not going to get them to change that. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, as we know, a lot of these mind altering things get used incorrectly, right? Alcohol being one of the most socially accepted. And I'm not putting down anybody who drinks here, right?
No,
I'm
right.
not judging anyone.
I like to have a glass of
You know what I'm
whiskey
saying?
or a glass of Guinness. It's relaxing. It can be very relaxing at night to have, one glass here or there.
But to some people, that one turns to 100, right? So,
That's
like you said, you got to call yourself out. If you know that that's your problem, why put yourself in that situation?
and as a peer to say, hey, could this you have to point that stuff out. And it's not going to work, the first few times maybe, especially people that don't want to see what they're going through in a minute.
There's one here that I really like that you put down,
Uh,
and it was have that tough conversation. And that one sometimes is really tough for people, man.
well, they'll blow up on you and say you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about.
Well, to have that tough conversation, you got to be willing. The person, I heard, I'm speaking about me, that person has to be willing to put themselves in the uncomfortable position to try to call you out, right? Because you might blow up on me and think I'm your enemy because I'm trying to point out the things that are messing you up. And, easy, like, who are you, man? And then if I've already shared some personal stuff with you, then this happens quite often. And like, who are you to tell me, man? Aren't you the one that used to do that? Or weren't you the one that did this to this person? How can you call me out on it? Right. So by me calling you out, I'm a healing person, like we spoke about earlier. I made mistakes. We all do. And I shared something with you. So now in your moments of rage, a lot of people just do that, man. They go into that privileged information because I took my wall down from you because I trust you and you use it against me. You know what I'm saying? So that's a chance that I'm willing to take to call you out, right? I have to be willing to understand that that's a possibility,
Right.
right? By me calling you out. So by me calling you out means that I really, at least again, I'm speaking for myself, that I really, really care about you to the point where I'm willing to let our friendship dissipate. But you're gonna hear this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, for sure.
It's not something that comes to me lightly. I won't do it at the very beginning of you going through something. But if it gets to that point, I will, man. I will put that friendship on the line to make sure that you hear, at least if from me. I don't know if nobody else is going to tell you. I don't know who you have around you. I don't know if somebody's willing to put themselves in that uncomfortable position. But I don't want to, like, damn, I wish I would have. And
Right.
now I don't have the opportunity anymore.
Right. That's
You know
that's
what
the
I'm saying?
biggest thing.
So
Biggest thing.
that's why I really like that one. That's why I think that was an important one. I think be willing to put yourself in that uncomfortable position to have that uncomfortable conversation could really be that straw that makes it or doesn't, Could be that mysterious text that just happens to show up. It could look like anything, dude. It doesn't have to be a call. It doesn't have to be a text. It could just be me showing up or whatever it looks like. Whatever that looks like is as unique as the PTSD that the person is dealing with. We won't know. We can't sit here and create a list of things, but just know that if somebody does that, man, at least for me, what I'm trying to get is there are always, for the most part, we all have somebody that really loves us and there's willing to put themselves in that situation for us. And maybe they already have, dude. People in our past, right? That we no longer speak with. Relationships that are now just somebody that we used to know, right? Like that song used to go. And dude, I became that person that was okay with the relationship coming to an end if it had to. I was like, we had our time together and now it's over. And I became okay with that because it was happening quite often.
It's just life. This direction changes, right?
No, one thing's for sure, man. Direction will change all the time, bro. Like this moment here, man. Like I remember having so many blissful moments in my life where ignorance or lack of experience, it felt like, you know what, dude, this is gonna be how I'm gonna live my life for the rest of my life. This is it. Whatever. It could have been good or bad, right? I believe that shit. This moment, yeah, we're gonna do this forever. Whatever that was, dude. And man, and how quickly if you look back, and I don't spend a lot of time in the past, but there's a few moments when I do look back and I'm like, man, I was doing something completely different with my life just 5 years ago,
I know. Every 5 years. 10 years ago, I was.
I mean, you were a completely different person 10
I
years ago.
cringe. I think about myself. It's funny.
But think about it, man. 10 years ago, I think in the last 10 years, a lot of improvement has been made when it comes to PTSD and mental health, right? More acceptance. And
It was a bill, so and it mandates departments to have
it's a positive move forward, in my opinion, right? A lot of things changed, man. And I mean, dude, I remember, for example, using cannabis back when I was a teenager, right? In high school, right? All those, I grew up in Miami, dude. It was everywhere. It was everywhere, not just Miami, everywhere,
I grew
right?
up.
So it was everywhere, right? And I think you can ask anybody where they grew up and they will tell you the same thing. But look at all the advances that since we were in high school, since I was in high school, and since some of our older friends were in high school, and you can go back as far as whatever. Somebody was using it. But here we are, you and I sitting down. You are work at a dispensary, at a medical marijuana dispensary. I worked at it. We are part of an organization that, amongst a lot of things, that's one of the things that we do, right? We help first responders, veterans through education and access through medical cannabis, right? An alternative to what we have known and that is shown to help. But 20 years ago, dude, forget about it, man. Some people knew, a lot of people knew the benefits, right? But it was like obscure knowledge or some hippie stuff, right?
Right.
But here we are, right? There's a full on medical,
Colleges do studies all the time.
and we don't get political here, but here recently, the president of the United States shared something big, right? He was talking about
I
the a system that a lot of people don't even know exists. That's not here or there, but what I'm saying is something that at one point was looked at as terrible.
right. Well, I mean, but it still is. There's still that stigma.
For sure, there's a lot of stigma about it.
How many people in Florida do you think has some sort of pharmaceutical prescription for whatever ailment they're going through?
I'm pretty sure it's higher than 4%.
Right. And how many side effects for, benzos or opiates? And how many rehab centers are there for opiates or pharmaceuticals? Methadone, what is that? A drug to help you come off opiates, right? Like that.
I mean, there's a drug for a drug, as we know, right?
But it's just, and that's more accepted and safer. And, cannabis still has that fight. It's so dumb.
We can sit here and create another list as to why that is, right? Oh, we're good. Like I said, we're good at making lists.
We are.
But the truth is that it matters not the list. It matters not what others believe or feel. Right? For sure. For sure. This is Molly. Tell me a little bit about Molly. And she's your service dog. Molly's a service animal that Matt got through the Wolfhound's legacy. That's exactly where my service animal comes from as well, and a few others within the organization. And it does feel amazing to have an option like a service animal, man. I didn't think when I first started that it was gonna be that life changing for it, right? Like you just kind of do it. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna go through this, and next thing you know, you're like, at least now it's been maybe like 7 months since I graduated from the Wolfhounds Legacy's service animal class, right? It was kind of cool experience because it's a lot of training for both of us, and I think it was very. The process was very healing for me, man. Going every Tuesday and every Thursday morning, it felt healing. It was part of my healing for sure.
Oreo was with you 24/7.
He still is. He happens not to be right here at this very moment, right? But he is, and he's become a good, and not just for me though. In my case, my wife Marianne, his transformation from a pet to a service animal is quite evident, and just the way she's looking at you right now, it's just quite amazing. Can't see her tail, but it's wagging, right? And so, yeah, man. And for any person out there who's thinking about going through getting an animal that can help them as a service animal, I think somebody in our group chat for the Grateful Veteran posted here recently. They saw somebody walking with their service mini pony, because they're one of the few animals that can be a service animal.
A pony?
The mini ponies, right? I think it's like the horses, mini ponies, and dogs. I believe. I don't know what. I think there's some other ones, but I'm not sure.
I think there's an alligator too.
We are in Florida. We do have some pretty cool stuff out here. I don't know if I can handle an alligator, man, but but yeah, man. I think that we've come a full circle here on our list of talking points. The mental health buddy, having the bag of tools, right? Understanding and calling not only yourself out, but calling your buddies out, right? I think those were having that tough conversation. I think to me that's it's one of the top ones here. But I think we didn't speak much. We did, but we spoke about actual professional therapy, how it works in conjunction
Right.
with peer to peer, talks or whatever you want to call it. But having somebody who can connect and somebody who has the knowledge and the studies, and
And
I
the
think it comes
stigma with
together.
that, like I always hear is, oh, I don't want to tell a stranger my personal stuff, or it's just like, I don't know, it's just people's fear of judgment to get help. It's just,
Well, they all have their list of reasons as to why it doesn't work for me, or why I shouldn't go through it, or I should leave that. I mean, this happens a lot within the veteran community. Oh, leave those benefits for the real veterans who need it. I still got all my limbs, but home life is wrecked, addicted to alcohol, maybe other things. But let other people who deserve it better. We always diminish our value and just let other people, or pretend that other people are more worth it than us, and let them deal with it. I'll just continue to do what I'm doing. I don't care if it works or not. It works for me. I've heard that 1,000 times. I don't know, man. Thank you for hitting me up and wanting to talk about this. This is a sensitive subject. PTSD, suicide, addiction, blowing up, right? What's that new term? People kind of crashing out. Somebody crashed out,
you gotta take care of patient
right.
there.
That's one that we kind of skipped, and I want to, now that you brought it up, I want to come back around, and it's what works for you. Now that you've been in the journey for some years, you've found what works and what doesn't. Okay.
Fitness has always helped. It's, exercise, and that's day.
Yeah, it just kind of
Uh,
happens.
yeah. So, there's exercise with that. And then there's, I like to do cold plunges once a week. It's 40 degrees of water for 6 minutes. I mean, you did it. It's a shock factor, and it's just recharging what your body comes back to.
It was great. I'm ready to do it again.
It's good to sit in a sauna. It's good to meditate, and experimenting with sound bowls and frequencies. It's to really try and calm your mind down once a week, once a day, to really just calm it down, quiet it down. It's just so helpful.
It makes a difference. It
Right.
doesn't mean that we don't crash out or that we don't have bad days.
Right.
It just means that when those do come, yeah, every time we do a little bit better than the last time. You know what I'm saying?
My favorite.
I mean, cannabis helps, man. But if we're being honest here, we can't sit here and pretend that it's for everyone.
No.
Some people it doesn't work for. Some people
Right.
tried it and are afraid to try it again because they were either led incorrectly, they weren't led at all, or They
My uncle, like, had a bad experience and, he doesn't wanna try it again. I'm just like, "It's because you did," like, he has never smoked in his life, not even cigarettes, and he tried to go straight to, like, a vape. It's like, of course you're gonna cough and feel
yeah,
terrible. It's like, but, yeah, it's about using what works for you, but it's also about, realizing that there's some pretty stupid ways to cope and wrong ways.
for sure. There's good ways to cope, there's bad ways to cope. And those kind of fluctuate too. Those change as time passes. We can't expect what worked 5 years ago to help you the same way it helps you today. You have to be able to find continuous ways to help yourself. I agree. Either way, Matt, I want to thank you for your time, man. I think this has been a pretty awesome conversation. A few sensitive subjects. I don't think that we went pretty deep. We went deep enough for now. So I thank you for opening up. I thank you for wanting to have the talk, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I've ever really shared a lot of detail story of it. It helps me, and I feel like it could help someone if they're starting to go through it, give them tools and tips how to make it out because
Okay. But with that, what would you say to somebody right now who's going through it and just happens to come across this video? What what worked for you during your darkest moment?
sure you have someone that's the biggest thing. Life can always get better. It's not over. It's what you've experienced, what you've gone through. There's always a way to change your life and turn it around. It's just you just gotta keep going.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate your time, bro. This was good. This is good, man. Thank you for coming by the house and just being who you are, man.
Cut. All right. We gotta get one of those action
Uh,
things.
we do. We do.